1976. This striking portrait captures Sarah Bernhardt, the divine Sarah, who dominated the stage for decades, known for her eccentricities and golden voice. She was the first international stage superstar sleeping in a coffin to better understand tragedy. Hay Trang, 1975. Panic erupts as desperate civilians claw their way onto the last flight out during the American withdrawal. This chaotic scene epitomized the fall of South Vietnam as families were separated forever in the frantic scramble for survival. Belgrade, 1988. Zoo director Vuk Bojovic calmly negotiates with Sammy, an escaped chimpanzee, sitting atop a roof. Instead of tranquilizers, Bojovic used trust to coax the animal down, eventually driving him back to the enclosure in his own car. France, 1899. A helmeted diver explores the murky depths in what is widely considered the first underwater photograph. Louis Boutin developed revolutionary equipment to capture this image, proving that photography could exist beneath the surface of the ocean. Hong Kong, 1989. Martial arts legend Jackie Chan sings passionately at a benefit concert, supporting the Tiananmen Square protests, standing in solidarity with Beijing students. The Concert for Democracy became a defining moment of political activism for local stars. London, 1980. Jack Nicholson smiles for the camera on the set of The Shining, unaware that director Stanley Kubrick is actually photographing his own daughter Vivian in the mirror. This candid moment captures the playful atmosphere amidst the film's horror. Massachusetts, 1930. A kitten naps peacefully in a doll stroller in this charming capture by Alton Blackington while the Great Depression raged outside moments of simple innocence. Like this provided a brief, heartwarming escape from the era's hardships. New York, 2000. Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell pose comfortably with global elites, projecting an image of high society success. These photographs now serve as chilling evidence of how deep their connections ran before their crimes were fully exposed. Baltimore, 1996. Police arrest Joe Metheny after a victim escapes his clutches, uncovering a house of horrors. Investigators soon discovered he had murdered multiple people, confessing to mixing their remains into burgers he sold to unsuspecting customers at his stand. California, 2008. Bruce Pardo knocks on his ex-wife's door dressed as Santa Claus, armed with a flamethrower and guns. What began as a holiday party turned into a horrific massacre, leaving 9 dead in a meticulously planned act of revenge. Florida, 1981. 6-year-old Adam Walsh vanishes from a Sears department store, sparking a nationwide search. His tragic murder remained unsolved for decades, but drove his father, John Walsh, to launch America's Most Wanted, revolutionizing how the country hunts fugitives. Georgia, 2024. During a high-stakes divorce proceeding, Akon's wife demands a massive settlement, only for the court to discover a shockingly low balance in his accounts. The revelation sparked intense debate about asset protection and the hidden finances of the wealthy. Germany, 1981. A grieving mother, Mary Ann Bachmeier, smuggles a pistol into a crowded courtroom. Standing before the man who assaulted and murdered her daughter, she fires 8 shots, delivering fatal vigilante justice that shocked the nation and divided public opinion. Philadelphia, 2011. Teacher Ellen Greenberg is found dead with 20 stab wounds, yet authorities strangely rule it a suicide. Despite the physical impossibility of the injuries, the case was closed, leaving her family to fight a decade-long battle for truth. Kansas, 2005. Carrie Rawson's world shatters when the FBI reveals her loving father is actually the BTK killer. Dennis Rader had tortured and murdered 10 people over decades, hiding his dark double life within the very home where he raised her. Pacific Ocean, 1983. Tommy Oldham Ashcraft wakes to a destroyed yacht and a missing fiancé. After a massive hurricane fighting grief and injury, she navigates 1,500 miles using only a sextant, surviving 41 days at sea in a miracle of endurance. Arizona, 2001. Balbir Singh Sodhi is gunned down while planting flowers, targeted simply for wearing a turban, days after the Twin Towers fell. His murder marked the first hate crime retaliation after the attacks, a tragic case of misplaced anger. Harlem, 1940, the Ten Boom family transforms their watch shop into a secret sanctuary for Jews fleeing Nazi persecution. They saved 800 lives before an informant betrayed them, sending the brave family to concentration camps for their acts of courage. Hamburg, 1936, amidst a sea of raised arms, August Landmesser stands with his arms defiantly crossed as Hitler passes in love with a Jewish woman. His silent protest became an iconic symbol of individual resistance against the pressure of the mob. Hollywood, 1925 actress Myrna Loy poses for a publicity still capturing the exotic allure that defined her early career. Before becoming the perfect on-screen wife, she was typecast as the vamp, showcasing the versatility that made her a silver screen legend. Los Angeles, 1969 actress Sharon Tate Beams, while holding tiny baby clothes, just weeks away from giving birth. This heartbreaking image captures her joy moments before she became the victim of the Manson family, a crime that ended the era of peace. Alabama, 1936, Mrs. Cleveland Owens reads a newspaper confirming her son Jesse has dominated the Berlin Olympics, as Hitler watched her son shattered records and racial myths, bringing immense pride to a mother waiting back home in the American South. Alabama, 1910, 8-year-old Pinky Durham stands with his injured sister outside the textile mill where they labor, captured by photographer Lewis Hine. This image exposed the brutal reality of child labor, where children sacrifice their health and youth for pennies. London, 1979. 2 young women sport mohawks and leather on Charing Cross Road, embodying the rebellious spirit of the punk movement. Their bold style was a direct challenge to the establishment, signaling a cultural shift in the grimy streets of Britain. France, 1902. Itinerant knife grinders lie flat on their stomachs to work a technique used to save their backs from strain, often accompanied by dogs resting on their legs for warmth. These artisans traveled the streets, keeping the city's blades sharp. Say 1961. This Saturday Evening Post illustration by John Falter humorously contrasts a manicured lawn with a chaotic backyard. Next door, it perfectly captures the tension of suburban life, where the pressure to maintain appearances often clashed with the reality of living. France, 1918. Sergeant Henry Johnson wears the Croix de Guerre after single-handedly fighting off a German raiding party. Despite suffering 21 wounds, the Harlem Hellfighter saved his comrade in a display of valor that went unrecognized by his own country for decades. Pacific Theater, 1945. This dense map visualizes the final resting places of the Imperial Japanese Navy fleet. Each marker represents a sunken vessel, illustrating the overwhelming scale of maritime destruction that occurred as the Allied forces systematically dismantled Japan's naval power. Berlin, 1945. An elderly resident sits dazed amidst the apocalyptic rubble of the German capital, with the war finally over. The silence of the ruins replaces the sound of bombs, leaving survivors to contemplate the total destruction of their former world. USA, 1895. A father and daughter share a rare candid smile in this Victorian-era photograph. Unlike the stiff, serious portraits typical of the time due to long exposure needs, this snapshot captures a genuine moment of warmth and human connection across centuries. Hollywood, 1942, newlyweds Ava Gardner and Mickey Rooney strike a pose that belies their turbulent reality. This union of the studio system's biggest talents captivated fans, though the marriage would crumble under the pressure of fame just 1 year later. Vietnam, 1965. A helicopter door gunner stares exhaustedly into the distance after a harrowing mission captured by Larry Burroughs. This raw image exposes the psychological toll of the war, where young men faced relentless combat in the suffocating heat of the jungle. Italy, 1957. A stern police officer writes a fine for a woman wearing a bikini on the beach. This clash illustrates the cultural tug-of-war of the era as modern fashion trends began to challenge the conservative moral standards of post-war Europe. Weybridge, 1930, inventor Gilles Paris adjusts his revolutionary armored diving suit before a tank test known as the Tritonia. This atmospheric suit allowed divers to work at great depths without decompression, paving the way for modern deep sea exploration and salvage operations. Dallas, 1963. A somber Lyndon B. Johnson takes the presidential oath aboard Air Force One moments after JFK's assassination, with a blood-stained Jackie Kennedy standing beside him. This photograph captures the heavy transition of power during one of America's darkest hours. International Airspace, 1969, a flight attendant carves a massive ham for passengers aboard a Scandinavian Airlines flight. This scene epitomizes the golden age of air travel, where flying was a luxury experience defined by gourmet food, ample legroom, and impeccable service. France, 1918. A British soldier grins while holding a massive artillery shell, sarcastically labeled as a gift for the enemy. This display of dark humor was a common coping mechanism in the trenches, where soldiers found ways to laugh amidst the constant threat of death. European Skies, 1944. A diagram reveals the cramped, terrifying reality of a B-17 ball turret gunner curled into a fetal position inside a glass bubble. These airmen had the most dangerous job in the war, suspended below the plane, with nothing but sky beneath them. Cairo, 1945. Two women enjoy a moment of leisure, smoking hookahs in a local cafe. This candid photograph challenges Western stereotypes of the era, showcasing the vibrant social life and changing roles of women in Egyptian society just after the Second World War. Kansas, 1860s, Chief Abram Burnett of the Potawatomi tribe poses with a quiet dignity that commands respect, a man of immense physical stature and influence. He navigated the turbulent era of displacement, leaving a legacy that remains etched in the landscape of Topeka. Say 1971, a hostess proudly displays a fridge stocked with cheap beer and tomato juice. This snapshot perfectly encapsulates the unpretentious suburban hospitality of the 70s, where a portable TV and a cold can of Heidelbrau were all you needed for a good time. New York, 2001. A massive crowd gathers at Federal Plaza, desperate to donate blood. In the immediate aftermath of 9/11, this overwhelming display of unity showed a city refusing to break as strangers stood shoulder to shoulder to help victims of the terror attacks. Calais, 1944. Jacob Nacken, the tallest soldier in the German army, chats with a diminutive Canadian corporal. After surrendering, this surreal contrast in height highlights the strange humanity found in war, where former enemies could share a peaceful moment once the fighting stopped. Vietnam, 1965. American helicopters unleash a torrent of machine gun fire into a tree line to suppress enemy positions. This intense photo captures the reliance on air superiority in the conflict, as pilots risked everything to cover the advance of South Vietnamese ground troops. San Francisco, 1969. Church of Satan. Founder Anton LaVey stands with actress Jane Mansfield and a young Mariska Hargitay. This bizarre meeting of Hollywood glamour and occult counterculture fueled endless rumors about Mansfield's fascination with the dark arts shortly before her tragic death. Washington, D.C., 1865. Lewis Powell stares hauntingly at the camera while imprisoned on a Navy vessel, one of the conspirators in the Lincoln assassination. plot, his modern-looking fashion and chilling gaze have made this image a subject of fascination for over a century. Germany, 1929. The massive Dornier DuXA flying boat, with 12 engines, prepares for takeoff. This engineering marvel was the largest aircraft of its time, designed to carry nearly 200 people in luxury, representing the ambitious future of intercontinental aviation. Hong Kong, 1989. An aerial view reveals the dense, chaotic maze of the Kowloon-walled city, a lawless enclave where buildings were stacked atop one another. It was the most densely populated place on Earth before its demolition, housing thousands in a concrete hive. Wasay 1890's Ella Williams, known as Madame Aboma, stands tall as an international sensation, standing nearly 7 feet. She transformed from a domestic worker into a wealthy stage star, using her extraordinary height and strength to command audiences across the globe. Europe 1300, a stone latrine known as a garderobe protrudes from a castle wall. This primitive plumbing system relied on gravity to deposit waste directly into the moat, or a cesspit below, a stark reminder of the sanitary realities of life in the Middle Ages. Saw 1948. A group of men show off their zoot suits, characterized by high-waisted baggy trousers and long coats, more than just a fashion statement. This style was a symbol of rebellion and identity for minority youth, often sparking controversy and racial tension. Los Angeles, 1955. Anita Ekberg captivates the camera in a promotional shot for the TV series Casablanca. Her striking beauty and commanding presence in this image foreshadowed her rise as an international sex symbol and her iconic role in Fellini's La Dolce Vita. London, 1940. A milkman scrambles over rubble to deliver bottles while firefighters work in the background. This famous image symbolizes the indomitable British spirit during the Blitz, proving that even amidst destruction and war, daily life and duty carried on. France, 1900. Before digital editing existed, photographer Maurice Guibert created this trick shot of Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec. The famous painter appears as both artist and model, proving that photo manipulation has fascinated us long before the age of Photoshop. France, 1919. Dignity is forgotten as officers and politicians scramble over furniture in the Hall of Mirrors. They are desperate to witness the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, the document that officially ended the First World War. London, 1936. Long before she became the longest reigning monarch, 10-year-old Princess Elizabeth poses with her corgi Dookie. This early snapshot captures the beginning of a lifelong royal bond with a breed that would eventually become a symbol of her reign. Washington, D.C., 1920. Construction workers carefully assembled the massive marble segments of Abraham Lincoln statue. It took years to piece together the Daniel Chester French masterpiece, which now sits silently, watching over the National Mall as an American icon. Moscow, 1978. A security officer crawls from a hidden tunnel discovered deep inside the U.S. Embassy. The Cold War reached new heights of paranoia when this Soviet listening post was found, specifically designed to intercept delicate diplomatic communications. London, 1915. A massive net of steel cables is suspended from balloons over the city. This defensive apron was designed to snare low-flying enemy aircraft, a desperate and innovative attempt to protect the capital from aerial bombardment during the Great War. London, 1953. At just 27 years old, Queen Elizabeth I bears the weight of the St. Edward's crown. Millions watched this televised coronation, witnessing the solemn moment. A young woman dedicated her life to service amidst the grandeur of Westminster Abbey. Tehran, 1943. A young Polish refugee clutches an armload of bread at an evacuation camp, having escaped the horrors of war and deportation. This simple ration made from Red Cross flour represents his first taste of safety and survival in years. Saskatchewan, 1903. A Cree man gazes stoically into the lens of photographer G. E. Fleming. This powerful portrait captures the dignity and resilience of Indigenous people on the Canadian prairies during a time of immense cultural upheaval and rapid change. New York City, 1936. The massive Zeppelin Hindenburg casts a shadow over Manhattan just 1 year before its tragic end. This engineering marvel floats peacefully above the skyscrapers, serving as a haunting reminder of the golden yet dangerous age of airship travel. New York, 1988. Against the backdrop of the Twin Towers, Presidents Reagan and Bush meet with Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev. This gathering on Governor's Island symbolized the thawing of Cold War tensions, capturing a fleeting moment of global optimism. West Bank, 1947, resting in the dust of a desert cave. These ancient jars contain the Dead Sea Scrolls. Their accidental discovery by a Bedouin shepherd would soon revolutionize our understanding of history, revealing texts hidden for 2,000 years. Panama, 1912. A lone figure stands amidst the colossal lock gates of the Panama Canal. This image conveys the sheer scale of the engineering feat that sliced through a continent, costing thousands of lives to connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Europe, 1750. Before browser tabs existed, researchers used this mechanical bookwheel. The device allowed scholars to keep up to 8 heavy volumes open at once, rotating them vertically to cross-reference information with a level of efficiency ahead of its time. Outer space, 1991. Cosmonaut Sergei Krikalev floats in orbit while his country collapses below. He left Earth a citizen of the Soviet Union and returned to a completely different map, earning the title of the last Soviet citizen. Maine, 1864. At 100 years old, William Hutchings sits for a photograph as a living link to the birth of a nation, as one of the last survivors of the American Revolutionary War. His eyes have witnessed a century of history. Dallas, 1900. Children scramble up a tall ladder-like structure without a safety mat in sight. This perilous playground equipment reflects a different era of childhood play, where risk was part of the fun and modern safety standards were non-existent. Rome, 1922. The Italian royal family poses in formal attire just prior to the rise of fascism. Their stiff expressions betray the political turmoil brewing in the country, which would soon render their monarchy largely symbolic and eventually obsolete. Los Angeles, 1950. A young Marilyn Monroe poses for Life magazine before she became a global icon, dressed simply in a park. This photo captures the fresh-faced ambition of a starlet on the precipice of fame and tragedy. North Atlantic, 1912. A man demonstrates the rowing machine aboard the RMS Titanic. This state-of-the-art gymnasium was a luxury for first-class passengers, unaware that the ship itself would soon sink beneath the freezing waves, taking this equipment with it. Romania, 1987. Engineers achieved the impossible by moving a massive apartment building on rails to clear space for a boulevard, while residents remained inside. The 7,600-ton structure was shifted aside, showcasing the extreme urban planning of the communist era. Berlin, 1961. A family in the West holds their toddlers up high for grandparents to see from the east, separated by the newly built Berlin Wall. This heartbreaking gesture highlights the human cost of a city divided by concrete and ideology. California, 1952. Cars squeeze beneath the massive tunnel rock in Sequoia National Park decades later. The road was bypassed, but the granite boulder remains a timeless natural monument, watching the evolution of American travel from vintage sedans to modern tourists. Illinois, 1940. Standing nearly 9 feet tall, Robert Wadlow towers over ordinary crowds suffering from hyperplasia. The gentle giant never stopped. growing until his untimely death at 22, leaving behind a legacy as the tallest man in recorded history. Japan, 1865, a samurai warrior poses in traditional armor during the twilight of the Edo period, captured by photographer Felice Beato. This image preserves the martial spirit of a class that was about to vanish with the modernization of the Meiji Restoration. London, 2015. Helen Mirren proves elegance is timeless in side-by-side photos taken 45 years apart. From a 25-year-old rising star to a 70-year-old dame, her confident gaze remains unchanged, celebrating a career that has spanned generations of cinema. New York, 1955, Eartha Kitt instructs James Dean in the art of dance at a local bar. The candid moment captures the relaxed chemistry between two legends of the era just months before Dean's tragic car accident would shock the world. Europe, 1955, crowds gathered to gaze at a man billed as the heaviest in Europe in an era before the modern obesity crisis. Such extreme physical size was viewed not as a health condition, but as a traveling spectacle and medical curiosity. Say 1914. A young girl casually puffs on a cigarette, mimicking the adults around her. This shocking image reflects a time when the severe health risks of smoking were largely unknown, and tobacco use was so pervasive it even reached into childhood. Earth 10 million BC, a massive Stupendemys turtle swims through prehistoric waters with a shell the size of a car and jaws powerful enough to crush bone. This ancient reptile reminds us that turtles were once apex predators, capable of eating you whole. Europe, 1400, a suit of plate armor stands ready for battle weighing nearly 60 pounds. This steel exoskeleton was the tank of the medieval battlefield, offering a knight protection against swords and arrows while signaling his high status and wealth. Louisiana, 1937, in the rural community of Transylvania. A mother teaches her children at the kitchen table, lacking access to formal schools. During the Great Depression, families relied on determination and candlelight to ensure the next generation learned to read and write. New York, 1875, a well-dressed girl rides a goat-drawn cart through Central Park. This charming mode of transport was a popular attraction for wealthy families in the Victorian era, offering children a novelty ride amidst the greenery of the growing city. California, 1933, astronomers prepare a massive Zeiss refractor telescope mounted on a vehicle. This mobile observatory allowed scientists to chase clear skies and eclipses, bringing high-powered optics directly to the best viewing locations during the golden age of astronomy. Ohio, 1966, dust motes dance in the empty grandeur of the old Cincinnati Library with its cast iron stacks and spiral staircases. This architectural gem was tragically demolished, serving as a reminder of the beautiful historic structures lost to modernization. North Atlantic, 1918, sailors cram into the claustrophobic control room of a German U-boat surrounded by valves and gauges. These men lived in constant tension beneath the waves, operating the complex machinery that changed naval warfare forever during World War I Say 1970, a stylish woman leans against her muscle car, embodying the freedom of the open road. This era marked a shift in automotive culture where cars were not just appliances, but symbols of independence and fashion for women across the country. Paris, 1910, a stone gargoyle atop Notre Dame Cathedral stares broodingly over the city, designed to ward off evil and channel rainwater. This silent sentinel has watched Paris evolve for centuries, witnessing everything from revolutions to world wars from its high perch. USA, 1900. A mother sits stoically with her children for a formal portrait in an age of high infant mortality and limited medicine. These solemn photographs served as vital family records, capturing loved ones in a moment of stillness and unity. Global Prehistory, a museum display, juxtaposes a modern great white jaw with that of a megalodon, the sheer size of the prehistoric sharks. Bite reveals a terrifying monster that once ruled the oceans, capable of swallowing a human in a single gulp. Texas 1966, Neil Armstrong tests his spacesuit years before his historic moonwalk. His focused expression betrays the intense training required for the Gemini missions, where astronauts mastered the spacewalks and docking maneuvers that would eventually get them to the lunar surface. New Orleans, 1955, Fats Domino smiles at the piano, celebrating his rise to fame with 5 gold records and dozens of hits. This rhythm and blues pioneer broke racial barriers in music, laying the upbeat foundation for the rock and roll revolution. South Carolina, 1912. Young girls stand amidst mountains of shells at an oyster cannery captured by Lewis Hine. This image exposed the harsh reality of child labor, where children worked long hours with sharp knives instead of attending school. California, 1892, a family poses by the stump of the Mark Twain sequoia. It took 2 men 13 days to saw through the giant tree, a tragic display of conquest over nature that sparked the early conservation movement to protect these ancient giants. USA 1950, a patient purchases cigarettes directly from his hospital bed before the Surgeon General's report linked smoking to cancer tobacco was considered harmless enough to be sold by nurses to the sick, reflecting a completely different era of medical knowledge. France, 1920, cyclists share a smoke while riding in the Tour de France, believed at a time to open up the lungs and improve performance. This habit shows just how much sports science has evolved from the early rugged days of racing. USA 1984, moviegoers wait in line while a prankster holds a sign revealing a film's twist. Ending this analog form of trolling captures the excitement of cinema culture in the 80s, where a single spoiler could ruin the experience for everyone in the queue. Say 1900, a cartoon depicts electricity as a terrifying, unrestrained demon. As power lines began crisscrossing cities, the public feared this invisible force, viewing it as a dangerous and unpredictable beast that threatened to electrocute the unwary at any moment. Warsaw, 1945. A composite image reveals the devastation of the royal castle. Once a symbol of Polish pride, it was reduced to a pile of rubble by German forces, standing as a stark testament to the systematic destruction of culture during the war. Europe, 1940, a man loads firewood into a generator attached to his car with gasoline strictly rationed. During the war, civilians retrofitted vehicles to run on wood gas, a desperate but ingenious solution to keep moving amidst global shortages. Sicily, 1943, Italian nurses tend to the wounds of British soldiers in Catania. Despite their nations being at war, this moment of compassion highlights the universal duty of medical care, transcending political allegiances in the shared humanity of suffering. Pakistan, 1980, a sea of Afghan refugees flees across the border near Peshawar, displaced by the Soviet invasion. Millions were forced to leave their homes, beginning one of the longest and most complex refugee crises in modern history. England, 1928. Farm workers walk on tall stilts to string wires for hop plants. This specialized skill was essential for the beer brewing industry in Kent, where laborers balanced precariously to tend the towering vines that flavored the nation's ale. Iwo Jima, 1945, U.S. Marines display captured Japanese flags. After the brutal battle, these trophies represented a hard-fought victory on the volcanic island, where thousands of lives were lost to secure a strategic airfield closer to the Japanese mainland. Warsaw, 1956. A young woman smiles after being elected the first beauty queen in communist Poland. This event marked a brief cultural thaw, allowing a touch of Western-style glamour and individualism to peek through the rigid curtain of the Soviet bloc. Seattle, 1944. From the air, it looks like a quiet suburb, but underneath lies a massive bomber factory. The Army Corps of Engineers built this fake neighborhood to hide the Boeing plant from potential Japanese air raids, a masterpiece of wartime camouflage. New York City, 1976. Jimmy Carter and an aide hop a fence at LaGuardia Airport carrying his own garment bag. The future president displayed a down-to-earth style that would define his public image during the upcoming election. Paris, 1903. Aida de Acosta steers the airship Balladeuse near the Bois de Boulogne by flying this dirigible solo. She became the first woman to pilot a powered aircraft, mere months before the Wright brothers took flight. Lithuania, 1960s. The Trakai Island Castle stands majestically within Lake Galvi, originally built in the 14th century for Grand Dukes. This Gothic fortress was meticulously restored from ruins to preserve its medieval grandeur for future generations. Germany, 1901. A newly married couple poses for a formal portrait on their wedding day, dressed in their finest turn-of-the-century attire. They stare stoically into the lens, capturing a quiet moment of union before a century of change. Western Front, 1915. A father and son serving in the same regiment pause to read a letter from home. Huddled in the trenches, they share news from their wife and mother, finding a brief connection amidst the chaos of war. Cologne, 1919. A British Mark V tank sits parked on a city street during the post-war. Occupation, once a terrifying machine of the trenches, the Iron Giant now serves as a curious spectacle for German civilians passing by. New Zealand, 1905. A Maori woman gazes confidently at the camera. Wearing a traditional Moko tattoo on her chin, the intricate ink signifies her mana and ancestry, preserving her cultural heritage during a time of rapid colonial change. Japan, 1918. Schoolgirls line up wearing protective masks during the deadly Spanish flu epidemic. Even in the classroom, these precautions were strictly enforced to curb the spread of a virus that was devastating populations across the globe. Niagara Falls, 1969. The American Falls sit dry and silent, revealing a rocky cliff face usually hidden by rushing water. Army engineers diverted the flow to study erosion, creating a surreal landscape of stone instead of spray. Mongolia, 1923. Queen Genepil sits in traditional regal attire, her headdress framing a solemn face as the last queen consort of the Khanate. Her portrait captures the end of an era before political purges tragically claimed her life. Australia, 1962. Photographer John Drysdale finds himself on the wrong end of a boxing match with a kangaroo while attempting to capture wildlife on film. He became the subject of this humorous yet chaotic struggle with the local fauna. Egypt, 1864. Musicians pose with their instruments in a studio portrait by Ludovico Wolfgang Hart. Captured for a Western audience, the image preserves the traditional dress and instruments of the region during the mid-19th century. Los Angeles, 1925. Daredevils. Ivan Unger and Gladys Roy play a casual game of tennis on the wings of a biplane in flight. Without parachutes, they perform this death-defying stunt to thrill audiences during the golden age of barnstorming. California, 1942. A young Japanese boy waits with a numbered tag attached to his coat marked for evacuation to an internment camp. His expression reflects the confusion and injustice faced by thousands of families during wartime hysteria. Chicago 1930s delegates gather under banners of Lenin and Stalin for the Communist Party USA convention. During the Great Depression, the party gained traction among workers seeking radical solutions to economic collapse and social inequality. Washington, D.C., 1918. Leola King stands tall in her uniform directing traffic on the busy streets. As America's first female traffic cop, she broke barriers in law enforcement keeping order while men were away fighting in the Great War. Hawaii, 1890, a lone figure stands near the shoreline, holding a solid wooden board. This rare image is the first known photograph of a surfer capturing the ancient Hawaiian tradition of wave riding before it became a global phenomenon. New York City, 1981, a young Steve Buscemi poses in his turnout gear. While serving with Engine Company 55 long before Hollywood fame, he risked his life as a firefighter, a brotherhood he would later rejoin after 9/11. France, 1951, residents of Pont Saint-Esprit succumb to hallucinations and madness in the streets. This mass poisoning, known as the cursed bread incident, was caused by ergot-tainted flour, leaving the village in a state of terrifying delirium for days. London, 1914, suffragette leader Emmeline Pankhurst is physically carried away by police outside Buckingham Palace, screaming for justice. Her arrest became a defining image of the militant struggle to secure the right to vote for British women. London, 1960s, a young boy marches across a cobblestone street, clutching a toy double-decker bus surrounded by the real city. His small replica mirrors the iconic red transport that defined the bustling rhythm of the British capital. Mexico, 1892. The ancient pyramid of Chichen Itza sits consumed by dense jungle vegetation, once hidden under trees and vines. This Mayan wonder would eventually be cleared and restored to reveal the magnificent steps seen by millions today. Russia, 1968. Two toddlers waddle down a snowy street bundled in heavy fur coats, swaddled against the biting Soviet winter. The twins look remarkably like small penguins protected by layers of wool and love against the freezing temperatures. California, 1968. Elvis Presley sits behind the wheel of a dune buggy with his dog by his side. Taking a break from filming The King of Rock and Roll, enjoys a moment of sun-soaked leisure on the movie set. Pasadena, 1991, child stars Danica McKellar and Macaulay Culkin pose together at the Emmy Awards, riding high on the success of Home Alone. And the Wonder Years, they represented the pinnacle of 90s pop culture for a generation of kids. Paris, 1914. Dr. Maxime Menard performs a chest x-ray at Cochin Hospital without protective gear, while a medical pioneer, by radiation exposure, eventually cost him a finger, highlighting the dangerous learning curve of early modern medicine. Minnesota, 1910s. A Ford Model T climbs 3 steep flights of concrete steps. In Duluth, the driver pushed the car to its limit to win a $100 bet, proving the rugged durability of the Tin Lizzie. United States, 1931. 2 sisters lean in close to share a light during a cigarette break, dressed in the fashion of the Depression era. Their casual intimacy captures a candid moment of respite from the hardships of daily life. England, 1920s. 2 women pose with motorcycles at the Brooklands racing circuit. One straddles a vintage crank drive, while the other shows off a powerful new Imperial twin, celebrating the thrill of speed and female independence on the bar track. Chicago, 1929, repairmen balance precariously on a dense web of telephone wires high above the street before underground cables became standard. These workers navigated a chaotic vertical maze to keep the city connected during the communication boom. Mississippi, 1966, Martin Luther King Jr. walks alongside young students entering a newly desegregated school. Despite the threat of violence, his presence offered protection and hope, marking another hard-fought step toward equality in the American South. Los Angeles, 1979. A young Michelle Pfeiffer poses for a promotional portrait early in her career with a look that would soon captivate Hollywood. This snapshot captures the rising star just before her breakout role in Scarface transformed her life. United States, 1950s. A vintage advertisement promotes a lifestyle that seems shocking by modern standards, whether endorsing cigarettes for health or rigid gender roles. These colorful illustrations offer a window into the consumer culture and social norms of the mid-century. Texas, 1989. Boris Yeltsin wanders the aisles of a Houston grocery store. Wide-eyed at the abundance of food, overwhelmed by the selection, the Soviet leader realized his own nation's economic failure, a moment that helped hasten the fall of the USSR. Location unknown, 1970s. This questionable ensemble highlights the bold and often baffling choices of men's fashion during the disco era, from synthetic fabrics to daring cuts. This style proves that confidence was the most important accessory of the decade. Bamiyan Valley, 1992. This towering Buddha statue stands majestically carved into the cliffside years before its tragic destruction. By the Taliban, it serves as a poignant reminder of the rich cultural heritage that once thrived in this ancient region. Tokyo, 1980s. These rebellious youths channel the spirit of American greasers from the 50s with their elaborate pompadours and defiant attitudes. This subculture adopted rockabilly style to rebel against the strict conformities of traditional Japanese society. Hollywood, 1959. Costume designer Ori Kelly adjusts a sheer dress on Marilyn Monroe during a fitting for some like it hot. This intimate moment captures the meticulous work behind the scenes of one of cinema's most iconic comedic performances. Princeton, 1951. Physicist Albert Einstein sits in a car moments before sticking his tongue out for a legendary photograph leaving his 72nd birthday party. The genius displayed a moment of playful irreverence that the world would never forget. Pennsylvania, early 1900s. Young breaker boys sit amidst the dust at the Lehigh Valley Coal Company. Their small hands were preferred for separating slate from coal, a dangerous and exhausting job that highlighted the harsh reality of child labor. Pripyat, 1986. The first photograph taken on the morning of the Chernobyl disaster shows the destroyed reactor. The heavy grain on the image is caused by massive radiation levels in the air, effectively destroying the film the instant it was exposed. Location unknown, 1970s. A bride and groom pose on their wedding day, encapsulating the distinct style of the era, from the ruffled tuxedo shirt to the flowing veil. This snapshot preserves a joyful moment of love amidst the decade's unique fashion trends. Denmark, mid-20th century. King Frederick IX proudly displays his extensive collection of tattoos, reigning for 25 years. This monarch broke royal conventions with his naval ink, endearing him to his people as a king with a relatable, rugged past. China, 1900. Troops from the Eight-Nation Alliance stand together during the Boxer Rebellion. Soldiers from Britain, the U.S., Japan, and European powers line up, representing a rare moment of military cooperation among imperialist nations vying for influence in Asia. Mississippi, 1937. A 2-year-old Elvis Presley stands alongside his parents, Vernon and Gladys, long before he became the king of rock and roll. This humble family portrait captures the modest beginnings of the boy who would change music history forever. New York City, 1942. Workmen prepared to remove massive metal cornices from the Hotel Ansonia. These architectural treasures were scrapped to support the war effort, symbolizing how the city sacrificed its aesthetic grandeur to provide raw materials for World War II. California, 1920s. A family poses wearing protective masks during a flu epidemic. This haunting image from Dublin mirrors modern struggles with pandemics, showing how ordinary citizens a century ago took precautions to protect their loved ones from an invisible and deadly enemy. London, 1980. A candid Polaroid captures Shelley Duvall on the set of The Shining. Despite her bright smile, here this production was notoriously grueling, pushing the actress to her emotional limits under the perfectionist direction of Stanley Kubrick. Kerak, 1898. An Arab Christian Bedouin woman from a settled town poses for a portrait. Her traditional attire and intricate jewelry offer a fascinating glimpse into the cultural and religious diversity that existed within the Bedouin communities of the late 19th century. Chile, 1899. Selknam natives are photographed before being transported to Europe. Tragically, these indigenous people were taken from their homeland to be exhibited in human zoos. A horrific example of the exploitation and racism prevalent during the turn of the century. Location unknown, 1916. A Bulgarian soldier screams a ferocious battle cry for the camera during World War I. This intense snapshot captures the raw emotion and adrenaline of a man preparing for combat in the chaotic trenches of the Great War. London, 1909, a busy street scene captured by an unknown Russian tourist reveals Edwardian life. The candid angle offers an authentic look at the pedestrians and architecture of the capital, frozen in time just years before the outbreak of global war. Buenos Aires, 1951, a 22-year-old Ernesto Che Guevara poses while studying medicine years before becoming a revolutionary icon. This clean-cut student was just beginning the journey that would lead him across South America and eventually into the history books. Germany, 1909, Winston Churchill stands beside Kaiser Wilhelm II, observing military exercises. Ironically, the German emperor is showing his armies strength to the man who would eventually lead Britain against Germany in 2 devastating world wars decades later. Normandy, 1944. American soldiers wade through the water toward Omaha Beach on D-Day, titled Into the Jaws of Death. This photograph documents the terrifying first moments of the largest seaborne invasion in history as troops stormed the heavily fortified French coast. Nebraska, 1898. Chief Dust